given from a leader in the army to the army before they fought the Romans out of Britain. Speech of Galgacus to the Caledonian army. Countrymen and fellow soldiers, when I consider the cause for which we have drawn our swords, and the necessity of striking an effectual blow before we sheathe them again, I feel joyful hopes arising in my mind that today an opening will be made for the restoration of British liberty and for the shaking off the infamous yoke of Roman slavery. Caledonia is yet free. The all-grasping power of Rome has not yet been able to seize our liberty, but it's only to be preserved by our valor. We're not to expect to escape the general plunders of mankind by any sentiment of justice in them. When the countries which are more accessible have been subdued, they will then force their way onto those which are harder to overcome. And if they should conquer the dry land over the whole world, they will then think of setting their sights beyond the ocean to see whether or not there be certain unknown regions which they may attack and reduce under subjugation to the Roman Empire. For we see that if the Romans believe a country to be strong in arms, they attack it because the conquest will be glorious. If inconsiderable in the military art, because the victory will be easy. If rich, they are drawn thither by the hope of plunder. If poor, by the desire of fame. The East and the West, the North and the South, the face of the whole world is the scene of their military achievements. The world is too little for their ambition and their avarice. Their supreme joy seems to be the ravaging, fighting, and shedding of blood. For we see that once they have unpeopled the region, so that there are none left alive to bear arms, they say they have given peace to that country. Our distance from the seat of government and our natural defense of the surrounding ocean renders obnoxious to their suspicion. For they know that Britons are born with an instinctive love of liberty, and they conclude that we must at some point or another be led of taking advantage of our detached situation to disengage ourselves one time or another from the oppression. Thus, my countrymen and fellow soldiers, suspected and hated as we ever must be by the Romans, there is no prospect of us enjoying even a tolerable state of bondage under them. Let us then, in the name of all that is sacred, resolve to exert ourselves, if not for glory, at least for safety, if not in vindication of British honor, at least in defense of our lives. But after all, who are these mighty Romans? Are they gods or mortal men like ourselves? Do we not see that they fall into the same entrapments and vices as ourselves? Does not peace effeminate them? Does not abundance debauch them? Does not wantonness enervate them? Do they not even go to excess in the most unmanly vices? Can you imagine that they, who are famous for their vices, are likewise remarkable for their valor? What then do we dread? Shall I tell you the truth, my countrymen and fellow soldiers? It is by way of our intense divisions that the Romans have overcome us. They turn the misconduct of their enemy into their own praise. They say nothing of what we might have done had we been so wise as to unite against them. What is this formidable Roman army? Is it not composed of a mixture of peoples from different countries, some more, some less capable of bearing fatigue and hardship? They keep together while they are successful. Attacked with vigor, distress them, and you shall see them more disunited than we are now. Can anyone imagine that Gauls, Germans, and with shame I might add, Britons, who basely lend their limbs and lives to build up a foreign tyranny, can anyone imagine that these will be longer enemies than slaves? Or that such an army is held together by sentiments of fidelity or affection? No. The only bond among them is fear. And when terror ceases to work upon the mind of that mixed multitude, they who now fear their tyrannical masters They who now fear will hate their tyrannical masters. On our side is every possible incitement to valor. The Roman courage is not as ours, inflamed by thoughts of wives and children in danger of falling into the hands of the enemy. The Romans had not parents as we have to reproach them should they desert in their infirm old age. They have no country here to fight for. They are a motley collection of foreigners in a land wholly unknown to them, cut off from their country, hemmed in by the surrounding ocean, and given, I hope, a prey into our hands, without any possibility of escape. Let not the sound of the Roman name affright your ears, nor let the gold or silver upon their armor dazzle your eyes. It is not by gold or silver that wars are won, though they are rendered a richer prey to the conquerors. Let us boldly attack this disunited rabble. We shall find among them a reinforcement to our army. And what will then be there to fear? A few half-garrisoned forts? A few municipal towns? Inhabited by worn-out old men. Discord universally prevailing, occasioned by tyranny in those who should command and obstinacy in those who should obey. On our side, an army united in the cause of their country, their wives, their children, their aged parents, their lives. At the head of this army, I hope I do not offend against modesty by saying there's a general ready to exert all his power, such as it is, to hazard his life in leading you to liberty and to freedom. I conclude, my countrymen and fellow soldiers, with putting you in mind that on your behavior this day depends your future enjoyment of peace and liberty, or your subjection to a tyrannical enemy, with all its grievous consequences. When you therefore come to engage, think of your ancestors and think of your posterity. Thank you.
Mr. Hilligus has to leave early, so I want to make sure I give him his award. And I'll explain these awards later. But, Mr. Hilligus, you have the high distinction of winning the award for having persuasively argued for the value of vanity.
Second speaker today. My speech today is a dramatic retelling of Christ's crucifixion. Now, darkness fell on all the region round. The shrouded sun from the impenitent earth withdrew his light. I thirst, the Savior cried, and lifting up his eyes in agony cried, my God, ah, why hast thou forsaken me? Exclaimed. Yet deem him not forsaken of his God. Beware that error. 'Twas the mortal part of his compounded nature, breathing forth its last sad agony that so complained. Doubt not that veil of sorrow was withdrawn, and heavenly comfort to his soul vouchsafed. Ere thus he cried, Father, into thy hands my spirit I commend, then bowed his head and died. Now Gabriel and his heavenly choir of ministering angels, hovering o'er the cross, received his spirit, and light from mortal pangs, and fleshly prison set free, and bore it thence upon their wings rejoicing. Then behold a prodigy, that to this world announced, a new religion dissolved old. The temple's sacred veil was rent in twain, from top to bottom, midst the attesting shocks of earthquakes, and the rending up of graves. Now those mysterious symbols, heretofore curtained from vulgar eyes, and holiest of holies, were displayed to public view. The mercy seat, with its cherubic wings overshadowed, and the golden ark beneath covering the testimony, now through the rent of that deserved veil first saw the light. A world redeemed had now no farther need of types and emblems, dimly shadowing forth an angry deity, withdrawn from sight and canopied in clouds. Him, face to face, now in full light revealed the dying breath of his dear Son appeased, and purchased peace and reconcilement for offending man. Thus the partition wall, by Moses built, by Christ was leveled, by their great captain led up to the throne of grace, through the opening of his own flesh, a new and living way. Then were the oracles of God made known to all the nations, sprinkled by the blood of Jesus, and baptized into his death. So was the birthright of the elder born, his promise forfeited, whilst they, whom sin and erst in bondage held, made free from sin, and servants of the living God, and now gained the gift of God, eternal life. Soon as those ships and prodigies were seen of those who watched the cross, conviction smote their fear-struck hearts. The sun, at noonday, dark, the earth convulsive underneath their feet, and the firm rocks and shivered fragments rent, tossed them at once to tremble and believe. Then was our Lord by heathen lips confessed, when the centurion cried, in very truth, the righteous person was the Son of God. The rest, in heart assenting, soon abashed, watching in silence the tremendous scene, the recollection of his gracious acts, his dying prayers, and their own impious taunts, now rose in sad review. Too late they wished the deed undone, and sighing smote their breasts. Straight from God's presence went that angel forth, whose trumpet shall call up the sleeping dead at the last day, and bade the saints arise to come on earth to hail this promised hour, the day spring of salvation. Forth they came from their dark tenements, their shadowy forms made visible as in their fleshly state. Frequent they gleamed by night, by day, with fear and wonder seen of many, holy seers, prophets and martyrs from the grave set free, and the first fruits of the redeemed dead. They, who with Christ transfigured on the mount were seen of his disciples in a cloud of dazzling glory, now, in form distinct, mingling amidst the public haunts of men, struck terror to all worlds. Ezekiel there, the captive seer, to whom on Chabar's banks the heavens were opened, and the fatal broil held forth. With dire denunciations filled, of lamentation, mourning, and of woe, now falling fast on Israel's wretched race. He too was there, Hilkiah's holy son, with loins close girt, and glowing lips of fire by God's own finger touched. There might be seen the youthful prophet, Belteshazzar, named of the Chaldees, interpreter of dreams, knowledge of God bestowed, and vision skilled, and fair, and learned, and wise, the Baptist here, girt in his hairy mantle, frowning stopped, and pointing to his ghastly wound, exclaimed, Ye vipers, whom my warning could not move, timely to flee from the impending wrath now fallen on your head, whom I indeed with water, Christ said now with fire baptized, wherein ye were fruits. Lo, these are they, these shadowy forms now floating in your sight. These are the harbingers of ancient days, who witnessed the Messiah and announced his coming upon earth. Mark with what scorn silent they pass you by. Them had ye heard, them had ye noted with a patient mind. Ye had not crucified the Lord of life. He of these stones to Abraham shall raise up children than you more worthy of his stock. And now his winnowing fan is in his hand, with which he'll purge the floor, and having stored up precious grain in garners, will consume with fire unquenchable the refused chaff. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Maya Hamilton. I will be your next speaker. Is everyone ready? Then let's begin. Extract from President Washington's address to the people of the United States, September 17, 1796. It was 1796, and as the presidential election approached, the people once again looked to the great George Washington. Washington, however, after long contemplation, had decided to withdraw his name from the hat out of whom a leader was to be chosen. Longing for Martha and Mount Vernon, this speech would be Washington's last time under the bright spotlights of America, as he led the people into the future one last time. Friends and fellow citizens, the period for the new election of a citizen to administer the executive government of the United States being not far distant, and the time actually arrived when your thoughts must be employed in designating that person who is to be clothed with that important trust, it appears to me proper, as it may conduce to a more distinct expression of the public voice, to apprise you of the resolution I have formed, to decline being considered among the number of those out of whom a choice is to be made. I beg you to do me the justice to be assured that this resolution has not been taken without a strict regards to all the considerations appertaining to the relation which binds a dutiful citizen to his country, and that in withdrawing the tender of service, which silence in my situation might imply, I am influenced by no diminution of zeal for your future interests, no deficiency of grateful respect for your past kindness, but am supported by a full conviction that the step is compatible with both. The acceptance of and continuance hitherto in the offices to which your suffrages have twice called me have been a uniform inclination to the opinion of duty and a deference to what appeared to be your desire. I constantly hoped that it would have been much earlier within my power, consistently with motives which I was not at liberty to disregard, to return to that retirement that I had been reluctantly drawn from. The strength of my inclination to do this previous to the last election had even led to the preparation of an address to declare it to you. But mature reflection on the then perplexed and critical posture of our affairs with foreign nations, and the unanimous advice of persons entitled to my confidence, impelled me to abandon the idea. I rejoice that the state of your concerns, external as well as internal, no longer renders the pursuit of inclination incompatible with a sentiment of duty or propriety, and am persuaded whatever partiality may be retained for my services, that in the present circumstances of our country, you will not disapprove my determination to retire. The impressions with which I first undertook the arduous trust were explained on the proper occasion. In the discharge of this trust, I will only say that I have with good intentions contributed towards the organization and administration of the government, the best exertions of which a very fallible judgment was capable, not unconscious in the outset, and the inferiority of my qualifications. Experience in my own eyes, perhaps still more in the eyes of others, has strengthened the motives to diffidence of myself, and every day the increasing weight of years admonishes me more and more that the shade of retirement is as necessary to me as it will be welcome. Satisfied that if any circumstances have given peculiar value to my services, they were temporary, I have the consolation to believe that while choice and prudence invite me to quit the political scene, patriotism does not forbid it. And looking forward to that moment which is intended to terminate the career of my public life, my feelings do not permit me to suspend the deep acknowledgement of that debt of gratitude which I owe to my beloved country for the many honors it has conferred upon me, still more for the steadfast confidence with which it has supported me, and for the many opportunities I have thence enjoyed by manifesting my inviolable attachment, by services faithful and persevering, though in usefulness unequal to my zeal. If benefits have resulted from these services, let it always be remembered to your praise as an instructive example in our annals, that under circumstances in which the passions were agitated in every direction were liable to mislead, amidst appearances sometimes dubious, vicissitudes of fortune often discouraging, in situations in which not infrequently want of success has countenanced the spirit of criticism, the constancy of your support was the essential prop of the efforts, and the guarantee of the plans to which they were effected. Profoundly penetrated with this idea, I shall carry it with me to my grave as a strong incitement to unceasing vows that heaven may continue to you the choicest tokens of its beneficence, that your union and brotherly affection may be perpetual, that the free constitution, which is the work of your hands, may be stamped with wisdom and virtue, that in fine, the happiness of the people of these states may be made so careful and so prudent a use of this blessing as will acquire to it the glory of recommending to the affection, the applause, and the adoption of every nation which is yet a stranger to it. Though in reviewing the incidents of my administration, I am unconscious of any intentional error, I am nevertheless too sensible of my defects not to think it probable that I may have committed many errors. Whatever they may be, I fervently beseech the Almighty to avert or mitigate the evils to which they tend. I shall also carry with me the hope that my country will never cease to view them with indulgence. And after 45 years of my life, dedicated to its service with an upright zeal, the faults of incompetent abilities will be consigned to oblivion, as myself must soon be, to the mansions of rest. Relying on his kindness in this and in other things, and actuated with that fervent love towards it, which is so natural to a man who views in its native soil of himself and his progenitors for several generations, I anticipate with pleasing expectation that retreat in which I promised myself to realize, without alloy, the sweet enjoyment of partaking, in the midst of my fellow citizens, the benign influence of good laws under a free government, the ever-favorite object of my heart, and a happy reward, as I trust, our mutual cares, labors, and dangers. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Avon Abway, and I'm your fourth historical speaker.
Hold on.
Extract from Mr. Pitt's speech in the British Parliament in the year 1766 on the subject of the Stamp Act. I wrote a small introduction to give you guys a better understanding of what my historical speech is about. Here it is. William Pitt argued in Parliament that taxing the American colonies without their representation was unfair and risky. He called for the immediate repeal of the Stamp Act to protect freedom and avoid further conflict. It has been a long time, Mr. Speaker, since I have attended in Parliament. When the Revolution was taken in the House to tax America, I was ill in bed. If I could have endured to have been carried onto my bed, so great was the agitation of my mind for the consequences, that I would have solicited some kind hand to have laid me down on this floor, to bear my testimony against it. It is now an act that is passed. I would speak the descendancy of every act of this House, but I must beg the indulgence of the House to speak of it with freedom. I hope a day may be soon appointed to consider the state of the nation with respect to America. I hope gentlemen will come to this debate with all temperate impartiality as His Majesty recommends. And the importance of the subject requires a subject of greater importance ever engaged the attention of this House. That subject, only expected when nearly a century ago it was questioned whether you, yourselves, were to be bond or free. In the meantime, as I cannot depend upon my health for any future day, such as the nature of my infirmities, I will beg to say a few words at present. Leaving the justice, the equity, the policy, the expediency of the act to another time, I will only speak to one point, which seems to not have been generally understood. Some gentlemen seem to have considered it as a point of honor. If gentlemen consider it in that light, they leave all measures of right and wrong to follow a delusion that may lead to destruction. It is my opinion that this House has no right to lay a tax upon the colonies. When in this House, we give and grant. We give and grant what is our own. But in American tax, what do? We, Your Majesty's Commons of Great Britain, give and grant to Your Majesty? What? Our own property? No. We give and grant to Your Majesty the property of Your Majesty's Commons of America. It is an absurdity in terms. There is an idea in some that the colonies are virtually represented in this House. I would like to know who in America is represented here. Is he represented by any United Shire, in any county in this kingdom? Or will you tell him that he is represented by any representative of a borough, which perhaps no man ever saw? This is what is called the rotten part of the Constitution. It cannot continue a century. If it does not drop, it must be amputated. The idea of a virtual representation in America, in this house, is the most contemptible idea that ever entered the head of man. It does not deserve a serious refutation. The Commons of America, represented in their several assemblies, have ever been in possession of the exercise of this, their constitutional right of giving and granting their own money. A great deal has been said without doors of the power, of the strength of America. It is a topic which ought to be cautiously meddled with, on a good cause, on a sound bottom. The force of this country can crush America to atoms. I know the value of your troops. I know the skill of your officers. There is not a company of foot that have served in America out of which you may not pick a man of sufficient knowledge and experience to make governor of a colony there. But on this ground, on the Stamp Act, when so many here were thinking of crying injustice, I am one who lift up my hands against it. In such a cause, your success would be hazardous. America, if she fell, would fall like a strong man to embrace the pillars of the state and pull down the Constitution along with her. Is this your boasted peace? Not to sheath the
Not to sheath the sword in
not to sheath the sword in its scabbard, but to sheath in the bowels of your countrymen? Will you quarrel with yourself, now the whole house of Bourbon is united against you? The Americans have it wronged. They've been driven to madness by the injustice. Will you punish them for the madness you have occasioned? Rather, let prudence and temper come first from this side. I will undertake for America, and she will follow the example. Upon the whole, I will beg to leave to tell the House what is really my opinion. It is that the Stamp Act be repealed absolutely, totally, and immediately. Thank you. My legs are dust.
Hello everyone, I am Via Welpley and I will be speaking our fifth speech today. My speech is by Charles James Fox, and he was a British politician during the time of the American Revolution, and lived actually past the turn of the 18th century, specifically from 1749 to 1806. He was very supportive of the American colonies, so supportive in fact that he wore General Washington's army's colors around in public. And living in Britain, that wasn't a very popular idea. If you haven't guessed already, he was also a very strong opposer of King George III, who was king over Britain at that point. He has written several speeches in his time, and this is one of them. Speech of Mr. Fox in the British Parliament on American Affairs, 1778. You have now 2 wars before you, of which you must choose one, for both you cannot support. The war against America has hitherto been carried on against her alone, unassisted by any ally whatever. Notwithstanding she stood alone, you have been obliged uniformly to increase your exertions, and to push your efforts to the extent of your power, without being able to bring it to an issue. You have exerted all your force hitherto without effect, and you cannot now divide a force found already inadequate to its object. My opinion is for withdrawing your forces from America entirely. For a defensive war, you can never think of there. A defensive war would ruin this nation at any time, and under any circumstances, offensive war is pointed out as proper for this country. Our situation points it out, and the spirit of the nation impels us to attack rather than defend. Attack France then, for she is your object. nature of the wars is quite different. The war against America is against your own countrymen. You have stopped me from saying against your fellow subjects. That against France is against your inveterate enemy and rival. Every blow you strike in America is against yourselves. It is against all idea of reconciliation and against your own interest, though you should be able, as you never will be, to force them to submit. The war of the Americans is a war of passion. It is of such a nature as to be supported by the most powerful virtues, love of liberty and of their country, and, at the same time, by those passions in the human heart which give courage, strength, and perseverance to man, revenge for the injuries you have done them, of retaliation for the hardships you have inflicted on them, and of opposition to the unjust powers you have exercised over them. Everything combines to animate them to this war, and such is a war without end. For whatever obstinacy enthusiasm ever inspired man with, you will now find in America, no matter what gives birth to that enthusiasm. Whether the name of religion or of liberty, the effects are the same. It inspires a spirit which is unconquerable and solicitous to undergo difficulty, danger, and hardship. And as long as there is a man in America, a being formed such as we are, you will have him present himself against you in the field. The War of France is a war of another sort. The War of France is a war of interest. It was her interest which first induced her to engage in it, and it is by that interest that she will measure its continuance. Turn your face at once against her. Attack her wherever she is exposed. Crush her commerce wherever you can. Make her feel heavy and immediate distress throughout the nation. The people will soon cry out to their government, whilst the advantages she promises herself are remote and uncertain. Inflict present evils and distresses upon her subjects. The people will become disconnected and clamorous, and you will force them to desert any ally that brings so much distress upon her. What is become of the ancient spirit of this nation? Where is the national spirit that ever did honor to this country? Have the present ministry spent that too, with almost the last shilling of your money? Are they not ashamed of the temporizing conduct they've used towards France? Her correspondence with America has been clandestine. Compare that with her conduct towards Holland some time ago. But it is the characteristic of little minds to be exact in little things, whilst they shrink from the rights in great ones. The conduct of France is called clandestine. Look back but a year ago to a letter from one of your secretaries of state of Holland. It is with surprise and indignation your conduct is seen in something done by a petty governor of an island, while they affect to call the measures of France clandestine. This is the way that ministers support the character of the nation and the national honor and glory. But you will force them to, but look again how that same Holland is spoken of today. Even in your correspondence with her, your littleness appears. From this, you may judge of your situation. From this, you may know what estate you are reduced to. How will the French party in Holland exult over you and grow strong? She will never continue your ally, when you meanly crouch to France and do not dare to stir up in your defense. But it is nothing that she should not, while you keep the ministers you have. No power in Europe is blind. There is none blind enough to ally itself with weakness and become partner in bankruptcy. There is no one blind enough to ally themselves to obstinacy, absurdity, and imbecility. Thank you.
These are bright lights. My name is Delia Blake, and I will be your last speaker. Socrates' defense. Socrates gave this speech in Athens, Greece, before taking hemlock as his death sentence. He delivered it on February 15th, 399 BC. He's accused of manipulating young minds, but only wanting to educate his beliefs.
instill dangerous principles onto them, as well in regard to the worship of the gods as rulers of the government. You know, Athenians, I never made it my profession to teach, nor can envy, however violent against me, reproach me with having ever sold my instructions. I have undeniable evidence for me in this respect, which is my poverty. Always equally ready to communicate my thoughts, either to the rich or poor, and to give them entire leisure to question or answer me. I lend myself to anyone who is desirous of becoming virtuous. And if amongst those who hear me, if they prove either good or bad, neither the virtues of the one, nor the vices of the other, to which I have not contributed, are to be ascribed to me. My whole employment is to persuade the young and old against too much love, for the body, for riches, and all other precarious things of whatsoever nature they be, against too little regard of the soul which ought to be the object of their affection. Life. For I incessantly urge you that virtue does not proceed from riches. On the contrary, riches from virtue. And that all other goods of human life, as well public as private, have their source in the same principle. If to speak in this manner to be corrupt, I confess, Athenians, I am guilty and deserve to be punished. If what I say is not true, it is most easy to convict me of my falsehood. I see here a great number of my disciples. They crave only to appear, but perhaps the reserve and consideration of a master who has instructed them prevents them from declaring against me. At least their fathers, brothers, and uncles cannot, as good relations. And good citizens dispense with their not standing forth to demand vengeance against the corrector of their sons, brothers, and nephews. For these are the people who take upon my defense and interest themselves in the success of my cause. Pass on me what sentence you please, Athenians. I can neither repent nor change my conduct. I must not abandon a function which God himself has imposed on me. He has charged me with the care of instructing my fellow citizens. Should you resolve to acquit me for the future, I should not hesitate to make answer, Athenians. I honor and love you, but I shall choose rather to obey God than you. And to my latest breath shall never renounce my philosophy, nor cease to exhort you or reprove you according to my custom. I am reproached with abject fear and meanness of spirit, for being so busy in imparting my advice to everyone in private, for having always avoided being present in your assemblies, to give my counsels to my country. What is it then that has prevented me from appearing in your assemblies? That demon, that voice divine which you've so often heard me mention, and Melitus has taken so much pain to ridicule. For the rest, Athenians, if in the extreme danger I now am, I do not imitate the behavior of those who upon less emergencies have implored and supplicated their judges with tears, and brought forth their children, relations, and friends. It's not through pride, or obstinacy, or any contempt for you, but solely for your honor, and for that of the whole city. At my age, and with the reputation, true or false, which I have, would it be consistent for me, after all the lessons I have given upon the contempt of death, to be afraid of it myself? And to believe in my last action all the principles and sentiments of my past life? Do not therefore expect it from me, Athenians, that I should have recourse. Do not therefore expect it from me, Athenians, that I should have recourse to means which is either honest or lawful, especially upon this occasion wherein I am accused of impiety by Melitus. For if I should influence you by my prayers and thereby induce you to violate your oaths. It be undeniably evident that I teach you not to believe in the gods. And even in defending and justifying myself, should furnish my adversaries with arms against me and prove that I believe no divinity. But I am very far from such wicked thoughts. I am more convinced of the existence of God than my accusers, and so convinced that I bend myself to God and you, that you may judge of me as you shall think it best. Thank you.
Can we give them all a round of applause?